Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown, Sunday Night Edition. Daniel Outledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all the action, although there wasn't much great action until the end there over the weekend in Super League basketball. The one good thing about this show, Dave, is when you say that the bucket's getting low, people start filling your bucket up. Thank you to
Yeah,
everybody who reached out. I won't mention the name, but I did get somebody phone me in the week and give me a little pep talk and told me
making
to grit
investment.
my teeth and get on with it. So I will, but thank you for that. Um, somebody I've not spoke to for years as well. And the other good thing about this show, Dave, is when we don't know something, somebody will just randomly tell us what it was that we missed out on. I had an email this week clarifying what happened in Bristol
Yeah.
last week at half time, and I figured it's worth sharing because it's actually something we've never seen before. But I promised the person who told me that I wouldn't name names because they may or may not have been involved in making the mistake. So in
I heard it
essence,
from somebody who wasn't involved in making the mistake, so I'm quite
okay.
happy to name the name. But no, no, I'm
No,
not going
no,
to.
we won't do that. So, in essence, last summer there was a bunch of amendments made to the correctable error rule, including if the error is spotted in the first 38 minutes of the game and can be corrected, it should be. And midway through the second quarter, there's a foul on 21, and the scorebook mistakenly gave that to Zach Jackson when it should have been Leslie Smith. So the stats in the table, people always chat at halftime and check that they've got the same tally. They realised that they'd made a mistake and Jackson was on two in the book and not one. So they can obviously change that. But the new rules also allow you to correct erroneously awarding or cancelling of points from earlier in the game, whereas before basically you had to catch it pretty much as it happened if you were going to undo that. So what that foul meant was that Leicester got to 5 fouls in the quarter when it should have been four, and Bristol got to 14 fouls in the quarter when it should have been five. So Leicester's fourth foul of the quarter actually sent Keedy Johnson to the line when he shouldn't have been there. It should have been a sideline ball. He made both free throws. So those were the 2 points that were cancelled off for Bristol at half time, as you spotted. Fortunately, what happened to be Bristol's fifth foul of the quarter, but was only given as their fourth by Alan Louis just before halftime, happened to be a shooting foul for Spencer Johnson anyway. So they didn't miss out on a shooting foul. Otherwise, they'd have been able to take two more free throws there if it had been given as a sideline ball. It does lead to the weirdness on the play-by-play of the live stats, where it goes from Keedy Johnson being fouled to the next action being Charles Thompson shooting. But technically, that's now what happened in the game. There was no change of possession in all of that. So there you go.
Everybody's human.
Everybody's human,
And
and
the
we got
stats
there in the end.
never
And
lie.
it was a 1 point game. Good job it wasn't
And
1 point game the other way, wasn't it? Given Bristol lost 2 points.
well, maybe, but what's right is right.
Yeah, indeed. So
Uh,
let's get on to this week's action, starting on Friday. Cheshire Phoenix 112, Surrey 89 is 78. No Lawrence, Hunt was
Hang on a
back.
second. Just
Yeah.
which one of us is going to turn up for this game?
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Because sorry, didn't. But go on.
Well, Timberlake with a three on the first play, and it did make me wonder: do they not have the zone or synergy down in Guildford? Because if you just watched the film of him last week, you might.
Did you watch? Did you see that play? I mean, did you actually see? I mean,
Hmm.
basically, Jalen Ray is guarding him in the corner, and Jalen Ray just turns his head, and then kind of as Timberlake cuts to the top, Ray is nowhere near him, and kind of makes one of those kind of player style gestures, which is whoever's at the top guard him,
Yeah.
kind of as if because he totally forgot him. And it does make you think, and it kind of went downhill from there for
Yeah,
Surrey.
yeah.
They
Well,
were just
Cheshire basically got all the stuff that they like to get, making shots, getting to the rim, transition, all of that. They were 23-13 up in about 7 minutes, and it was more the 23. If you're going to let Cheshire score at that sort of pace, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting tweak for Cheshire is that Austin is handling the ball a lot more and Holden, they're using Holden more as an offensive scoring weapon. So they're getting Holden off the ball, which means he can get the ball later in the offense or then getting the ball in the post and he becomes a creative factor then. So you've got the threat of Austin early in the offense. You know,
Mm,
if people turn their heads, if he can attack, he will attack. But if not, it's not as static as just it was with Holden bouncing the ball and bouncing the
mm.
ball and bouncing the ball. So and Holden's obviously a really good post player, albeit in two games over the weekend he went over his left shoulder about 17 times.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know, which just eventually just kind of did my head in. It's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
please, just make him turn to his left once, please.
yeah, yeah.
You know.
It stuck around sort of 10 to 13 for much of the first half, and then just really got out of hand in the second half, and Cheshire cruised it.
Well, I just think that the other thing, sometimes teams just for whatever reason just aren't there.
Mm,
And it's probably the wrong place not to be there at Ellesmere Port because you've got to be in the fight from the beginning.
mm,
Otherwise, that can happen. Whereas with other teams, maybe the pace of the game slows down and you can kind of drag yourself back. Um, sorry, just weren't there defensively, offensively. Adelkin wasn't there. Um, it, yeah, you could see Lloyd was extraordinarily annoyed with them.
mm,
I mean, he only kind of purses his lips, twice a season, and in this game, there was you could have done the emoji with the steam coming out of his ears a little bit.
yeah,
Times that's what I thought anyway. They just weren't ready to play. I mean, Cheshire did great, but they did what they meant to do.
yeah, yeah.
Did what you're going to do, and
And they did it how they do it as well.
they did how they do it, and they've got a little bit of mojo back, I
Mm,
think.
yeah, yeah.
But I think it's a few little tweaks that have done that. But just yeah, just a little bit of mojo back. I still struggle with teams the way they're defending Austin. I mean, there must be reasons for it, but he gets there's one time in the I can't remember which game it was. It might be in the second game. Where Hunt is switched on to him, and Hunt is two steps too far out, and Austin pulls
Mm,
this move and gets fouled. And I'm like, I know you don't want to give him a runway, but just make him shoot a jump shot
mm,
you know, take the energy away. But notwithstanding that, they're good. I mean, they got three really good shot creators in Austin at the rim, and then Scott Grayson and Holden, and then you add in obviously White's ever-present threat on the slip screens and the quick offense. And you don't need much more. What they need
mm,
to do is to stop fouling and play solid defense, and they're getting better. But I think that might be because White's playing more minutes.
mm.
That's my impression.
Scott Grayson, 12 of 14 shooting for 30.7 rebounds, 4 assists. Timberlake, 5 of 9 for 3 for 27 points. White, 4 of 5 for 3 for 12 points. They were 17 of 32 from 3-point range.
Yeah, well, I will say, I mean, they are a little bit like kryptonite for Surrey because they've got a ton of athletic wings, and Surrey have got none.
Mm,
Josh Steele is semi-athletic, but he's
mm,
not Tyreek Scott Grayson.
mm,
And Surrey got the little guards. They haven't got Lawrence, and then their wings are basically Steele and Cholovinskas, who are,
mm,
you know, solid, but that's about it. They're not Scott Grayson or Holden. They're really tough matchups
mm,
athletically for them. So. You need the little guards to go off, but that's tough doing that for 40 minutes against them because then they put Scott Grayson on the ball, and Scott Grayson is always in Gooden's face, and Gooden and Ray having to make tough shots. They need to get, I mean, in reality, the weakness is inside, and Adelic and James need to be more impactful inside, but they weren't ready to play defensively, so none of it really matters.
no. Ray, 22 points, 5 assists. James, 19 points. Gooden, 16 points. Bristol Flyers, 76. Manchester Basketball, 62. Kayo was back, and Jonas Zore was in a month later. And Smith was back in the starting lineup.
Yeah, Zohore is interesting. I mean, obviously he played a little bit in this game. He played even less today. Um, on the face of it, he looks like the kind of solid, big European pro who is totally unsuited to playing in the SLB,
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
particularly in coming into a team in late March and having to get acclimatized. You know, that gives them their third centre. It gives them their FJ um, help man, as it were. But when he gets into foul trouble, but then Del Pesh been playing really well. So I thought it was kind of an unusual signing. Nothing I saw from him suggests that A, he can't play. I think he can play, but B, I don't think he's going to help them. So the two things aren't mutually exclusive.
Mm, mm.
Um, actually, Mandalay probably thought the same thing today because he didn't play the second half.
No, I didn't.
And so I'm not, but I thought that on Friday. And Manchester would do the course correction.
Mm.
You know, they've been winning on energy and they've been winning on vibes and going up and down, and the coaches kind of playing defensive on the sidelines, and everything is
Mm,
really aggressive and up tempo, and they've caught some teams who are kind of cutting through the Ides of March um, without that level of stuff, and they've caught some teams and won some games. But Bristol are now, having had that win against Leicester, having had that week off, pre-planned week off, um, Bristol are now also developing that little bit of kind of end of season goodwill. It's coming at the end of the season. They've been through most of it now. They can see the tape, and so I kind of thought that Bristol's energy might struggle with Manchester might struggle with Bristol's energy in this game. It's exactly what happened. Um, Manchester, they require Ashton Langford, I think, and to a certain degree, John and DeBose to be impactful offensively, and they just weren't on it in this game. Ashton Langford got two early fouls, which hurt them a lot because he came out for a period of time, and they didn't make jump shots.
no. DeBose gave Manchester a 5 point lead early on. It was relatively tight in the early stages. Threes from Lewis and Johnson had Bristol five up, and then in the 4 minutes either side of half time, they scored 14 consecutive points to lead 47 27 a couple of minutes into the third quarter, and that was basically the ball game.
Yeah, it's weird because Bristol have got this kind of, it's really unusual. They're playing with two centres and then they're playing with no centres.
Mm,
And what they got in this game was, excellent game off Lewis from Lewis off the bench. He started basically the whole season. And then an excellent contribution from McCormack at the five spot,
yeah.
defending under the rim and getting a couple of blocks and doing all those things, and
He needs to look more convincing when he gets a block though, like he knew he was going to get it. There was one or
yeah,
two highlight plays, like even on the dunk that he got, he looked surprised by himself
yeah.
dunking it. Act like you've been there.
Yeah, absolutely. But he probably hasn't been there much.
Mm,
I get the feeling he was a stretch four shooter at college,
mm,
and a good one. But because of that, they've it's a really interesting tweak. It'll be interesting to see if teams kind of are able to cotton onto it and to figure it out as to how they match up with them. Because Lewis is a tough cover if he's at the five spot. He really is. He's playing exceptionally well, and they've kind of given Louis the ball a bit more now, haven't they? You can see
mm,
he's getting a lot more of the basketball, a lot more of the decision making, and they're going to probably go as far as he takes them. But they're a physical Bristol in that gym in particular. I say in that gym all the time, but they're when they play with their physicality and when they're all um, moving the feet and playing decent defense and getting up and down, then they're a tough team. They
mm,
remain a tough team. They might be 7-12 or whatever, but what the downside is that they have offensive droughts and at times they can't make a shot.
yeah.
That's the
But
same.
and in part that's what that building helps because most teams going in there can't make any shots, so the other team's not generally getting away to 110.
Well, that might be right.
Mm,
I don't know. I always wonder about the building thing. It's interesting, isn't it? Whether what is it the sight lines? Is it the atmosphere? Is it the closeness to the court? Is it the wooden backboard? What is it? I
mm,
don't know. Is it the travel? Is it getting? But yeah, right. I mean, it is. Um, but no, it's loud. I mean, that's the other thing. It's loud.
mm,
Particularly when they're up in transition, they're running,
mm,
and that can sometimes play with players as well. But no, I just thought this was a course correction. I
mm.
was thought Manchester were due a loss, and I think the coach will have used it to emphasize a few things.
Lewis, 8 of 12 for 21 points and 6 rebounds. Johnson, 16. Louis, 13 points and 7 assists. I managed not to write down Manchester's scorers, but I've quickly opened the live stats for that game. 12 for Mitchell and 9 rebounds. 11 for Ashton Langford and 7 assists. They were the only two
They
in
shoot from three.
double figures. They were 5 of 22 for 3 and 38% from the floor.
Yeah, it's not going to win many.
No, not really. Let's go to East Kilbride. Caledonia Gladiators 66, Leicester Riders 88. Riders struggled to score early in this one. Caledonia sort of jumped on them and out to a 10-point lead after 5 minutes. 16-6. I think it was the six that was the key to that.
Yeah, Leicester are young, and obviously there's a few of those guys. You know, you go up to Scotland, you go up to Scotland. That's a long trip for them. They're coming off a loss at the end of the season, and they Caledonia aren't a bad team, but they're not quite fully formed,
Mm,
and they never will be now. So, you know, in reality, um, this game, Leicester missed shots early. Caledonia played with a bit of energy. This game turned on the fact that Caledonia couldn't keep making shots, and Leicester didn't bail them out defensively,
mm.
basically. And letting Leicester be. And on top, and to be absolutely fair, the most talked about player in the history of this show,
Yeah, yeah.
Duke Shelton.
Well,
Uh,
I've got written down here when he's not doing crazy things, Shelton is actually playing really well at the minute. In between the madness, he's doing some really positive things.
at times, yeah.
Mm,
And you know, his level of importance to the team is inversely proportional to the
mm.
amount of flexes he does. That's the reality, you know. The
Yeah,
more, you know, just to use the LeBron, you know, shut up and dribble, just shut up and play.
yeah, yeah.
Well, no, this game, I mean, you know, they went this game turned on the Duke Shelton Theo Hughes match
Mm,
up at the end of the first quarter, and Hughes let Shelton go to his right, got turned around, and Shelton dunked it. Then Hughes failed to finish in the post up, and he's got his 5 inches. Then he came down the other way, and I think Shelton got a rebound on him, and you know, and Shelton got going.
mm,
And that allowed Thompson basically not to have to play the first half
mm,
because he did literally the whole second quarter because he's so impactful. And you know, Caledonia, you've got three centers, and that can't happen.
mm,
You know, and he made a couple of jump shots, and that's fine. You know, you live with a couple of jump shots, but not the energy stuff, not the offensive rebounds, not the driving to his right and getting dunks. You
mm,
know, but
mm.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Duke Shelton, we've talked about him before. You know, he appears to have the memory of a goldfish. Just
Yeah, yeah, it does. Yeah.
whatever's in front of him, he's going to do next. And go as hard as he can, play as hard as he can, and try and impact the game positively for his team. But Caledonia have to have a better plan and can't let that happen. He can't have, you know, the opposition's backup centre going for 18 and 10 in
Mm.
18 minutes or something like that.
19,
You
I think
know,
it was.
19
I
minutes.
meant to actually look up because that was, I would suspect that's probably the closest the minutes have been split all season between Thompson because it was 20 something or other and 19 something or other. But I
Yeah.
meant to go and check to see whether they'd ever
Well,
got close
Thompson's
to them.
been a little bit down. He was a little bit down in the Bristol. You got the blocks in the Bristol game, but he was a little bit down at the beginning of this game as
Mm,
well, you know. And so, you know, it's a fantastic boost for Rob to have Shelton coming off the bench
mm, mm,
and giving them that degree of production whereby he can basically stay in the game the whole second quarter,
yeah.
you know.
So
Uh,
he had six in a row as they cut it to four. He then had another four alongside threes from Wright and Johnson in a 14-2 run that put Leicester ahead 29 to 30. Spinning forward to the second half, 56-56 with 12 minutes to go, and then two threes from Jackson, 5 points from Wright. Leicester scored 12 in a row to lead 56-68.
yeah, the defense, you know, basically it's the same problem Caledonia have had. Ventura was a non-factor.
Mm,
So that left Whelan and Ramsey to do all the heavy lifting in relation to shot creation, literally all the heavy lifting.
mm,
And you know, the teams that Leicester are more vulnerable to are the better teams because they beat everybody who's not a good team, or
mm,
not the better. They beat everybody. You know, the record against the bottom five will be, or bottom four will be something in one, which will be the Surrey game,
mm,
in the cup. Um, and that's because they don't beat themselves and they work enough good shots whereby they're going to make them. And you, in the way that in the teams they do struggle against the teams with the talented individual scorers
mm,
and those in the talented individual creators, and there wasn't enough of that for for them to survive. The only way Caledonia survive in that game is if they look after the glass and don't give up second shots. But that died when Shelton went off.
mm,
I mean, he was that game. You
mm,
know, even if it didn't matter, even if he wasn't part of the bit of the in the fourth quarter, by changing the dynamic of that game, by getting offensive rebound, you know, that's the only way they could Caledonia could stay in that game was to hold them to one shot and hope to kind of chisel out enough points.
mm,
Um, but I didn't think they could because, as I say, their roster is still imperfectly formed. And
mm,
despite the fact they've had 6 point guards this season, and Okafor's not there anymore, so we
mm,
assume he's gone. They're left now with just Ramsey and Whelan basically to handle the basketball.
mm,
And and Whelan's, you know, Whelan's not played point guard for a long time, probably if ever.
mm,
And he's having to play 10, 12 minutes a game as point guard, and that means he's going to wear down.
mm.
So. I thought, and Leicester's the worst team in the world to play against like that because they will not put you on the line. I mean, the only way the opposition can get on the line against Leicester is if the scorer gives them a couple of. Um, they won't put you on the line. They'll not give you anything free, and they'll basically grind you down. Eventually, score a couple in transition, and then Abercrombie or Wright will break your back with a couple of threes.
Mm, mm,
And that's what happens against the teams that can't go score for score with them.
mm, mm,
You can't. Their defense is just missed. It's very good. It's not outstanding, but the most important thing is it's mistake free.
mm.
And
Yeah.
and they just ground them down.
Yeah. Caledonia also then didn't score for nearly 6 minutes in the fourth quarter. Leicester went 16-0, so it was a lot more comfortable than it looked likely to be. Barnes 15.7 rebounds, Spielman 13 points, Ramsey 12 points, 11 rebounds. 11 rebounds. Jackson 23 points and 13 rebounds, Wright 17 and Shelton 17 points and 10 rebounds. Newcastle Eagles 80, Sheffield Sharks 67. Three imported refs for this one, Dave. I believe they were from the 51st state, and I
Yeah,
assume you were in the building.
I was in the building. Yeah, I was in the building for quite a while. Yeah, that's a bit. It's a bit unfortunate. The games
Mm,
I've played, but a bit sad, really.
mm,
I've always taken the view that when you travel around the country for 10 or 11 years,
mm,
and you see people and you meet people and you do that, you generally eventually begin to see the best in people,
mm,
because of that. And I just find it, pretty sad that we have a British league without British refs,
mm.
on needing to fly people in. But hopefully it will resolve relatively quickly.
Indeed. Knight was back for Newcastle. He had five in a 9-0 run, and they had an early 10-point lead, Newcastle.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bizarre game, I thought, insofar as Sheffield were flat, and I think obviously they were rusty. They hadn't played in 12 days. Um, and I thought for a team that is, going for the league, whereas Newcastle obviously are just trying to win a game after losing five in a row. Um, Sheffield weren't as, it was almost like they'd been flattened by everything that had happened.
Mm,
you know, and you say, how can that be? Because players are players, but it's vibes, it's mentality.
mm. Yeah,
There's
yeah.
so much been going on. It's almost like, it was meek is probably the best phrase,
Mm,
and that's. There was a time in the third quarter where Nixon was having a little joke with Defoe, and they were covering their mouths and stuff like that. And I was just thinking, it's just the game is being played, but um, there's no edge to it. And there
mm.
was probably more edge from Newcastle than there was from Sheffield. And then on top of that, the rhythm hurt, and Clay got, Darius did a good job of taking a charge in the first minute or two, which meant that
Yeah.
Clay sat down. Then he got a second foul, which was a bit dubious, and he sat down again. So he was sat down the whole first half, and effectively. And Clay's a real difference maker for them.
Mm,
Difference maker probably in the league, because of what he does, how he fills the middle for them. And then there, what I was really impressed with. I haven't seen Sheffield live since like September because I wasn't at the Christmas game. I was really impressed with Anderson and Coutinho's defense. I understand why they were playing so much. Um, it was difficult to find. It was probably difficult for Newcastle to find mismatches. And to be fair, Newcastle made some really tough shots, which is why they won this game. Because they've got guys who can do that. Um, but the thing with having Anderson and Coutinho playing as many minutes as they did is that they kind of lost a couple of other guys.
mm.
And Jeffries, who's pretty solid basketball player, only played 5 minutes, 0 of 2. And I think they must have recognised that because he started the game today.
Yeah, yeah.
And obviously Glasgow didn't play much, and then Groves didn't play that much in the fourth quarter. Graves only played 19 minutes, and Groves is he's probably the weakest link defensively, particularly against that Newcastle team with a bunch of wings. But offensively, he really opens things up for them. He gives them that extra guy in spacing. Again, you
Yeah,
saw that there.
yeah.
And so I thought that hurt them. So they never really got into a rhythm. Ward Hibbert defended Nixon really well. Nixon still had 19, but he had to work for them. And Newcastle's scouting on Nixon was really good. And Darius held his own, which is really important.
Mm,
And he really struggled to do that today in the game this afternoon. But he held his own with Clay and made a couple of big plays, made a couple of big plays down the stretch. And yeah, there wasn't, it was, and I heard all
It,
about how good the refs were and how they let the game play. And they probably didn't call. The only difference was they probably didn't call as much on the perimeter, but there was no niggle to it.
mm.
I didn't see. There was. It
There
was.
was a bit more today, I thought.
Well, absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah. Well,
we'll
there
get
would
to
be,
that
wouldn't
in a
there?
bit. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there was, and I'm not sure.
And there was
I'm
a
sure
few,
they were
and
quite good
obviously
today.
yeah, we'll get to it. But obviously there
Yeah,
was the whole goaltend thing that wasn't called, and Mark getting a tee and going nuts. But we'll come to that.
yeah, absolutely.
So lead briefly peaked at 14. Nixon and McGill helped Sheffield to a 13-2 run to get it to 35-33 just before halftime. Again, Eagles got into the lead by 10 in the third quarter, and again McGill and Nixon cut it to one early in the fourth quarter. And actually, it was still only a 3-point game with 3 minutes to go, 70-67. But Newcastle scored the last 10 points of the game. The key play was score. They got a stop, run out dunk for Knight with a minute and a half to go, and
And
that
Knight,
set.
I mean, Knight made big shots throughout the game. I think he made a corner three on a step back, which put them up six. And then Alan Aikens made one of his plays on Anderson where he kind of bumps it and kind of throws it
Mm,
in from a silly angle. And then they got a steal. Sheffield, I mean, that was one of the Ricky games that I kind of saw a bit last
yeah,
year.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
one in every four games, maybe. He was like
One
one
of
of
nine
nine.
shooting. Yeah.
And and had a couple of turnovers at the end, and I was wondering whether he would come back in with 8 minutes to go because he got a rest, and Atiba went with him and he played 31 minutes. But that's they got an embarrassment of riches, Sheffield.
Mm,
That causes problems.
yeah,
You
yeah.
figure out who it is. You got to fit you, and you got to make decisions as to which guy am I going to run with and which guy am I not going to run with. I don't think. Yeah, it's probably Nixon's team down the stretch. There are games that McGill will win for them, but when Ricky's not in a rhythm early in a game, it's rare that he comes up with the play, the plays at the end. We saw a lot of, we had three really talented guards at Newcastle last year, but we
Mm,
had some awful crunch time offense.
mm,
I'm not just putting all that on him. But I'm just saying, that there were times the crunch time offense was, oh. And I think, he never got into a rhythm in this game. And when he's, one of that three-headed monster with Nixon and Clay,
mm.
um, then him not getting that, and he's playing 31 minutes, and that's why they scored 69 points in
Yeah,
reality.
yeah.
Um,
67.
67, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
So they were out of rhythm. They were all a bit flat, I thought. I
Mm,
don't think the minutes were probably divvied up the way that Atiba, looking back on it, would have wanted, and that would be borne out by the way he did it today. I thought they were a bit more offense, defense balance today. And then, Seneca Knight made some really tough shots.
mm,
Step back to his left. He was, what, 8 of 10?
mm,
And they weren't easy shots. Sheffield are a good defensive team. I really like them. I
mm,
see why they've won so many games because, particularly with Rotino and Anderson, they're the two that teams are trying to pick on, and we've got a bit of size on them. I mean, take them in the post, and they're really good.
mm,
And it's, um, but you got a guy like Jeffries. You got to find minutes for him
mm,
as well. You got to find minutes for Groves. You got to work out where's my offense, where's my defense, and yeah, so it was good. It was probably a game that Newcastle needed more than
mm.
Sheffield. Well, no, they didn't. Sheffield need all of them because they want to win the league, but Sheffield just need to get back on the court and play after the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Whereas Sheffield Newcastle had those
Mm,
five losses that were coming off, and as I say, refs. They missed a couple of calls. There was one 3 point. Knight made a 3 point shot right in front of me and basically landed on somebody's foot and fell over, and the ref never called it. But overall, as I say, there wasn't enough in it
no,
to test
no,
them.
no.
And I'm not having, and I've seen it. I've seen some of the rubbish on Facebook. Oh, fantastic refs, let the game flow, all of that stuff. It's the
Mm,
players.
mm.
But
Yeah,
I'm sorry, it's
yeah,
the way
yeah.
the players. I'm not having a small sample size of one game, and everybody thinks our refs are all our 35 our refs are rubbish, and all three of theirs are good. They may be good refs, but they can referee a whole season with the same players and then see how they do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, coming off work on a Friday afternoon,
Yeah.
and probably getting paid slightly more than 120 quid that our guys do. So yeah, right.
So you were
I'm in the
close with,
union now, by the way. I'm in the
yeah,
ref union
yeah,
now.
yeah.
You
It
can tell
sounds
now.
like
I've
it.
gone
Yeah,
native now.
yeah. You were close with Knight. He was 7 of 9 for
Nice.
20 points, seven
Fun shots.
rebounds. Alan
Yeah.
Aikens, 12. Okoro and Long both had 11. Nixon, 19.7 rebounds. Clay, 17 points. And there was no third head of the three-headed monster. Nobody else in double figures, as we say. McGill, 1 for 9. So let's go to Saturday. Surrey 89ers 71. Cheshire Phoenix 94. Just as I was a little worried when Timberlake hit that shot at the start of the first game between these two teams. When Skylar gets a 4 point play in the first minute, you're thinking, "Oh my goodness, this could go exactly the same way as the day before." But actually, Surrey started this one much better than they had done the
But
day
yeah,
before and scored 11 points in the first quarter to lead by
yeah, I mean
10.
they got a reaction,
Yeah.
which is what they needed. But the reality was that out of 8 quarters, they got well beaten 7 of them.
Mm,
Um, the reaction, the reaction was offensive, but defensively, they looked like they were mentally just done. I mean, it wasn't just the one that Skylar got; it was the 4 or 5 that shots that he got. Some were, some were more open than others. But it was the little slip screens. There was times there was miscommunication on switches. It was almost like these guys hadn't played with each other much.
mm, mm,
And the Cam Holden in the post thing became almost laughable at the end
mm,
because there was just um, no ability to kind of stop them. And it is picking on the weakness that Surrey have, and I get that. And they are down bodies because Lawrence hasn't played again. He's been out for another 3 weeks, and the problem with signing Lawrence is that you might get half a season out
mm,
of him. Every time he's injured, he's not injured for a game. He's injured for 5 or 6. Then you have Cholovinskis hardly played in this game. I rather assumed he must be hurt, but he came on late, kind of late in the second quarter, so that puts him down bodies as well. Parkinson is a project. He's not an SLB third guard at this point, which is what he's having to be with Lawrence and Cholovinskis out. Yeah, and they got a little bit of play out of Hunt, but Hunt's a really, but big guys are really, it's really tough matchup against
mm,
Cheshire. Big
mm,
guys,
mm,
it really is. And I just thought that it wasn't. This wasn't about Surrey's attitude. It was about their attention to detail. They did show up. They were ready to play. They are always. They're always going to have some bounce about them. I don't want to cast aspersions on them. I mean, every team this year has had a game where they haven't just been there,
mm,
and you throw it away straight away on Friday. But this was different. They were just worn down by a more athletic team in reality, and it was all. And unfortunately, they have to play the perfect game, and their game was anything. And defensively, their game was anything but perfect.
mm.
You know.
Planutis and White hit threes to start a 12-0 run. Knicks led 39-42 before halftime. When we eventually got going, a massive delay just before halftime, and then another one just after halftime.
Yeah,
Um,
a little bit weird, wasn't it?
yeah. I think it was.
Basket moved or something. Yeah.
I couldn't work out whether the basket was out of place or whether some cables had been dislodged. I was told both things,
Well,
and
it was
then
looking, it looked.
either Wi-Fi blew up or a laptop crashed in the second half.
You remember when we used to give out texts for hanging on the rim
Yeah.
years ago? Never
Yeah.
happened. As soon as the rings became snapback rings, they don't give them
Yeah.
any. I
No,
think Cam Holden had to go at this one.
he did. Yeah. And then 3 minutes into the third quarter, Timberlake with a technical for throwing the ball away, moaning, whatever it was. He'd got
He
an
threw it.
unsport.
Yeah, he threw it miles away, didn't he? I mean,
Yeah, he
kind
did.
of half returned it to the ref and slowed the game down. He threw it to the advertising board in front of Lloyd Gardner.
Yeah, he did.
It was
Yeah.
nuts. He's like,
He,
"Oh,
he
sportsman."
got an unsportsmanlike earlier in the game, so he was disqualified on one unsportsmanlike one tech. To be honest with you, when he got the unsportsmanlike, I thought, oh, he's going to get a tech. Here we go,
Yeah.
because he was complaining about it then. So my Timberlake radar was up from the moment he got that
Yeah,
unsportsmanlike.
he is. I mean, he is. As I say, he's a mini Teddy Allen. He can go for
Mm,
37 any game, but he could also be thrown out of any game.
mm, mm,
And they're going to have to manage him. They're going to
mm,
have because he's a dynamic scorer,
mm.
but he can't get a technical like he got for throwing the ball away after
Even
that's
the unsportsmanlike was just he just ran into him. It's like,
yeah. I was after a steal. It's an instant reaction. Players do that all the time. Not very, and to be honest, if it was replay, he might have got away with it because there was a player about a step further back
mm.
at the
I
time.
think it was. I think it was more that he just ran into him, no play on the ball rather than last man. But yeah.
Okay. But the technical was just the dumbest dumb thing,
Mm, mm,
Yeah. And it was a pity game because refs called a lot of stuff. Maybe because I'd been used to watching the game on the Friday night where they hadn't called much at all. the Eagles game. But they caught a lot of stuff in this game. It was all a bit bitty and a bit frustrating. But Surrey are short on bodies, a little bit tired, and Cheshire reaching, cheating, gambling, fouls.
Mm.
So it's going to happen, I suppose.
Gooden with five in a 7-0 run late in the third quarter put Surrey 62-54 ahead, but then Cheshire scored the next 18 points in a row, or 24 of the 26, if you want to go all the way out to 64-78, and that was basically the game.
Yeah, I thought just Surrey just ran out of gas. They need the guys. They've got to find somebody who can score the ball, um, without it being Mervyn James.
Mm,
Um, and they play. Both teams are playing on back to back, so both teams are tired. But Cheshire have better bodies to play on the back to back than Surrey do.
mm,
They have more athletes than Surrey do, and so the advantage of it is, I think, with Cheshire, the advantage reduces a bit when Timberlake gets thrown out because they're down bodies as well. But it's easier ultimately for Holden and Scott Grace and Austin to get their shots in the fourth quarter than it is for Ray and Gooden to get their shots in the fourth quarter when they've played 60 minutes in the last 24 hours.
yeah.
And I just thought that it was the balloon just deflating, wasn't it?
Well, it was
Right.
31-9 in the fourth quarter, and Parkinson had the last five of those in the last 2 minutes.
I thought Cheshire, I'm not sure. I thought Surrey's offense is at one point. I think Lloyd was saying just run a play. They went out. They got mind melted by that. I think their fatigue to a certain degree and what was in front of them, and they really kind of went away from their offense quite a lot at that time. And it was almost like you're looking for the 13-point shot, you're looking for the 15-point shot, and that. But Adelican, I don't think Adelican played much of the fourth quarter. He has to with those guys' bodies down, they need 20 and 10 from him.
Mm,
And they didn't get close to it in either game. So
no.
he might be hurting as well. It's the end of the season, these things happen. But I thought it was more than anything else, Cheshire have to be happy because their defense was better than it has been
Mm.
for a long time. Um, and so they're another team that might just be kind of coming out of
I think you used the word mojo a little earlier. They
yeah.
they feel like a team that have got their mojo back now. They feel like a team that are back to where they looked at
They
earlier
know
in
how
the
they want to
season.
play
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they know how they want to play again, and they just have to manage the personalities all the way. And they got to play Surrey again next week, obviously, which probably which might that'll be an interesting game. But Surrey play Newcastle first. So yeah, so yeah, they were,
Mm,
they were okay. But I felt you can't be effectively two guys down with that team. It's tough because you look at Scott Grayson coming off the bench. And what Surrey got coming off the bench is basically Teo,
mm,
and that's tough,
mm,
because Teo's, 30, what, 38, 39.
mm,
Um, and they've got Scott Grayson and Ulf and a couple of other guys who are being, really impactful, even with Eitel Rock out.
mm,
So, but I do like the way I do like the way, I think they found a way, giving Austin the basketball, getting Holden off the ball more. I think they are less static. They can maneuver Holden into the right places whereby he can throw his cross-court passes, which we haven't seen much of recently, but we've seen a bit more of this weekend.
mm.
Yeah.
Gooden 15, James 13 points, 9 rebounds, Ray 12. White, 6 3-pointers in his 19 points, 5 steals as well. Holden, 18 points and 9 assists. Austin, 15 points. So that was the doubleheader of that game. Let's go to the doubleheader of Sheffield Newcastle today. Sheffield Sharks 80, Newcastle Eagles 73. Jeffries, we touched on it a little earlier, but his first start since January. Eagles didn't score for the first 5 minutes of the game. Sheffield out to a 16-0 start. Apart from Nixon getting two early fouls, everything going Sheffield's way in the first few minutes.
Oh yeah, Newcastle really slew out the block, and Sheffield, quite as they're meant to do on their home court after losing on Friday night, come out and they've kind of got the stink of Friday out of them, and they come out and handle it. Again, Newcastle have been very, very, they're very, very slow in starting games on the road this year. Sometimes at home as well, but this was again they weren't getting good looks. They don't really have a focal point with their offense. It's a weird offense they've got. because it's almost equal opportunity, but it kind of needs players to get into rhythm. And
Mm,
at the beginning of games, you're wondering, where are we actually going to go for the basket? It's almost like it's everybody's turn. Um, and it wasn't that Sheffield scored, went off and made a ton of tough shots. Sheffield just played and did everything they were meant to do. And Newcastle didn't get any particularly good looks, didn't get to the rim, didn't get any offensive rebounds, and Mark called a timeout at 11-0. I'd have probably called one a little bit earlier. But then he did what seems to be what coaches always do
yeah,
nowadays.
yeah.
Send the same five out again.
There was two. Was it two this weekend where they did that? And I thought, oh, Dave's not going to be happy with that.
I don't like it. No, I don't like it because he sends. And what's happened? They score another five.
Mm,
It's almost like, okay, guys, I'll give you the chance. No, you've had your chance.
mm,
I'm going to put these other guys in. You can't be playing 15-point catch up against a team of the quality of Sheffield on the road.
mm,
Because arguably, I mean, Newcastle won the rest of the game
mm,
relatively comfortably, but you can't be giving them 15 points. And and it's something they have to address because they've changed their starting lineup around a bit. Walter Tippett's starting, Pulliam's coming off the bench, James is coming off the bench. It was actually Pulliam who actually made the first shot when he came in. So it's
yeah,
rare that it's your sub who scores your first points of the game.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and
It is when you don't go early.
yeah, we don't go early, yeah, obviously. 6 minutes in. So no, I thought, if you can, I'd kill the run at probably 7 or 9, and basically before it can get any further and just refocus everybody. And I think the part of the maybe, I looked at the numbers on Friday night in the program. That was Newcastle's 46th game of the season,
Mm,
right? Sheffield will be somewhere in the kind of late 30s probably.
mm,
Probably, yeah. Um, That's an enormous amount of games, and we won everything. We played 50 games,
mm,
and we played every game we could in 2014-15. We played 50 games. Newcastle are on pace for 61,
mm,
62 games. With now the starting centre gone for the year as well. And unfortunately, they're carrying a guy, Will Neighbour, who's not producing anything for them.
mm,
So they're basically down to eight meaningful players, and one of them is 40. Um, so I think when you've got a team that when you play that many games and you're with the guys that often, I can understand the urge is not to get too high and not to get too low,
mm,
and just trying to ride everything out because you're going to have ups and downs, and there's always another game. But on this one, I think my spidey senses, yeah, would have been tingling a bit earlier because 16, you can survive 9 or 11, but you can't survive 16. I don't think.
mm.
Even if the game is close later on, it's just too much to you've climbed up that mountain and then you've got to climb it up again. Climb it.
Yeah, they scored 10 in a row to cut it to 20 to 14, but Sheffield back into double figures in the second half,
Yeah,
in the second
Sheffield
quarter,
just on that.
sorry.
I mean, Nixon got a couple of. He certainly got one slightly dodgy call in the first half, and that meant he had to sit down all the way to the half time because Tiba likes to do that. So that kind of I thought gave Newcastle a little bit more impact. The other thing about this game was that Jeffries started
Yeah, yeah.
instead of Ratinho, and Ratinho had actually been the best player on Friday night, and he was a +9 in 20 minutes. And I thought his defense, his movement was excellent. So it says a lot about him that he's happy to sit down, and I don't know if he's happy, but that he's not going to impact the team of things. It's not going to impact him to sit down to get Jeffries in because they need Jeffries to give them more than 5 minutes a game because he is a weapon. So there were kind of a few adjustments more from Sheffield in relation to minutes than from Newcastle, but Newcastle haven't really got many adjustments to make.
Mm. Last 3 minutes of the first half, Eagles 9-0 run to cut it to 41-40. Sheffield started the second half not quite as well as the first, but not far off it. 16-5. They opened out the third quarter to leave 58-45.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the same personnel, Cole Long started instead of Darius, so even Pulliam may have started as well. So it's not necessarily a personnel thing. It's just kind of a rhythm of the game thing, I think, with Newcastle almost. And somebody having to, because they're almost so equal opportunity, it's like, no, someone really needs to be, the focal point where we're going to go. We're going to throw it down low. We're going to get the ball inside. The only guy they really post up is Christian James, and he's not on the court. So that means you're running a lot of dribble, weave, and
Mm,
penetration stuff. And if you're not getting any if teams are switching on you and you're not getting any steps on that, it's a problem. And the biggest thing in this game for Newcastle was that Okoro's three wasn't going, and that frustrated him. You could
mm,
see.
mm,
So yeah, so Sheffield just Clay is a major difference maker in the league because of his mobility and his ability to finish, and also his strength around the rim to get rebounds and finish. And and he was instrumental in taking them out to that lead. I thought the refs absolutely butchered the third quarter. I'm
Mm.
going to say this now because I'm not, and I didn't want to. I don't want to just because they're from Canada or whatever. I'm not. I'd say it if they were from Britain. There was a half court call on Jalen
Yeah, he'd
Rose.
not established the ball in the front
It
court.
wasn't even close. If an
Yeah,
NBL referee, an NBL one ref, NBL two ref,
yeah,
that I'd have been giving him absolute pelters. It
yeah, yeah.
wasn't even close. He had 1 foot in the front court, and the
Mm.
rule is you've got to have two feet.
In the old, 20 years ago, Dave, it would have been a backcourt, but not in
It
modern
was
day.
it was
Yeah.
that was horrendous. Then Nixon got a foul on I think which is his third foul, which wasn't great. Then there was a McGill carried the ball at half court on a 3-point play. I don't know if you spotted that one. In transition, yeah, transition 3-point play. If
Oh
you
yeah, 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 yeah,
he
yeah,
picked the
yeah,
ball up and carried
yeah,
it, and
yeah,
clear as
yeah,
day.
yeah.
Didn't spot. There was Darius got called for reverse pivoting for an offensive foul, which I thought was. I know you can get that call nowadays if you try to hit somebody, but I don't think he even knew he was there.
Mm.
And I just thought and then the whole thing degenerated.
The play on the buzzer as well,
Yeah,
where
and the
there was
buzzer was a disaster.
it was probably a foul. It was almost certainly a goaltend, and it was
Well, it was. Well, we see it's probably a foul. You see James's shirt.
he pulled his shirt.
Pull the
Yeah,
shirt. I mean,
yeah,
you can't, your shirt doesn't, unless there's some form of kinetic energy in Sheffield, which I'm not aware of, your shirt doesn't, ride up your back if someone's not put their hand on it. It's
mm,
the ultimate giveaway. It's the easiest call in the world to make. Then you see the bottom camera and you see that three Eagles players immediately are signaling basket good when
mm,
Robia drags the rim.
mm.
And that's a 3-point play, which wasn't given. Mark goes ballistic, gets a technical, fair enough.
I thought for a minute I didn't see the call, and I was like, "Wow, how has he got away with that?" Because
Yes, we're not
he
getting a
deserved
technical.
a technical. Whether
We
the call
absolutely
is
deserve
right
a
or wrong
technical.
is irrelevant. He deserved a technical,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it was called in the end.
But that's a 4-point swing.
Mm,
That's a 4-point swing in that game because that's a basket good, one shot, and go for it. And I'm afraid, and this is my side, it wasn't a hard call.
mm,
At the end of the day, it was not a hard call. Um, because those refs are stood right next to those Newcastle players who are signaling basket good. And
mm,
players don't do that. They haven't seen something
mm.
to get back on defense.
I
So
was. I thought the with the unsports with the I thought the foul was more egregious than the. I
yeah,
could almost live with it going. Well, did he really make an impact
pull the ring,
on the
don't
thing?
matter.
Yeah,
The ball's up there, he pulls
but
the
the
ring.
but
Sometimes, I mean, there's one today I think there's another one in this game. Long missed a layup with his left hand in the third quarter, and one of the Sheffield players hit the net. And I was all right with that because it was the net as opposed the ball
mm,
was kind of on the backboard, but it didn't hit the rim. I think he missed over hit the backboard and then came off the rim. And Sherry play hit the net and he didn't call it. I'm thinking, okay, maybe I've seen that called. But if someone touches a rim, it don't matter. I'm
mm,
sorry. The presumption is very strongly in favor of a goaltend if
mm,
you're on the rim and someone's made it there. But anyway, they botched it, and that's the type of unfortunately those two calls, the half court call
mm,
on Groves and the missed goaltend, you know, that's the type of thing that we would be standing here calling people out for
mm.
whichever game it was, whoever the refs were,
Yeah, yeah,
because it's not about interpretation. Um, it's not about did he or didn't he. It's not about was it a block or a charge. All those things which are bang
yeah.
bang calls, which you do your best. It's about basic fundamental understanding of the game and seeing what is directly in front of you with your own eyes.
Mm,
So the call which probably had the most impact was that call, albeit to be honest, it never felt like Newcastle were going to win this game anyway.
no, no.
Because they were close to it. They were keeping themselves close, but they never at any point seized the initiative in the game. No one ever made enough plays in a row to make a substantial difference when they needed to get a defensive rebound, they couldn't get one, that type of thing. So I'm not going to turn around and say, even though it was a 3-point game, with a minute and a half to go or something, I don't think it fundamentally did it. Because then what happened was the next two, if you go back to the beginning of the fourth quarter, right? Newcastle get two calls at the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Mm,
I think one may have been an offensive foul, and another one might have been a fourth foul on Nixon. And they were makeup calls.
mm.
So at this point, the whole thing is just botched. I'm sorry. So yeah, it could do better, CBL, good luck.
The Sharks were 75-64 ahead. Newcastle then hit seven in a row to cut it to 75-71. Like you, I never felt they were going to win. I thought they took a few sort of hero ball shots towards the end
I
when
well, I
when they had
think
a chance.
a little bit, but I think that's what they are.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not sure. I mean, Mike Okoro had a couple of wide open threes.
Uh,
He made one. He came off a screen, made one. Then he had a couple of wide open threes, which you can't. I'm not going to complain about Mike Okoro shooting, even if it's a couple of steps outside the
mm,
3 point
mm.
line. And of course, he got frustrated.
He
Then
then fouled out.
he
Yeah.
fouled out because he put his head down to try and get to the rim because he wasn't making his threes.
Mm,
And Prentice Nixon took the charge,
mm.
made the right play. So it was a little bit of frustration. James had a three in the corner. I think Knight had one as well. And ultimately, you didn't ever get the impression that there was anybody on the Newcastle team who said, I'm going to drag us over the line here, you know. And I think, at the end of the day, Sheffield are a little bit deeper and a little bit better at this point. The records in the league show it. And particularly with Clay being a massive difference maker. This was Darius' second game in 3 days. He had limited impact. Cole Long played the five, gave them a different option, which, he had 14 points and shot the ball well. So that you can play a different way. But at the end of the day, that kind of Nixon Clay thing, and then Groves, every time they get two on the ball, Groves is in the corner wide open, knocking down
Yeah,
three.
yeah, yeah.
Sheffield, I think Sheffield got the balance of the minutes right. I haven't looked at the stats, but compared to where they were on Friday when Groves had 19 minutes, Jeffries had 5 minutes, and Anderson was up at 33 and Routinho was up in 30 and stuff like that. They get more offense out of those guys.
Mm.
More defense than maybe the other way, but they get more offense out of those guys who came in. And I think that's why they got to 80, whereas on Friday they got to 67.
McGill, 19 points, although 5 of 19 shooting, 8 assists. Clay, 17 points, 11 rebounds. Grove, 6 of 7 shooting for 15 points. They were 5 of 20 for 3, Sheffield. Long, 15, Knight, 14, Okoro, 11. Newcastle were 38% from the floor and 25% from 3.
Yeah, that's not going to get it done.
Mm.
Albeit they probably should have been 39% from the floor if the ref had called that goal time. Maybe even
uh,
got to 40.
Let's it might have done. Let's come to the final game. Manchester Basketball 93, Caledonia Gladiators 91. No Onwas or Ventura in this game. Slightly chaotic. Well, I'd say start to the game, but it was slightly chaotic in general. Irvin scored the first 9 points for Manchester, but there wasn't much in it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was. It was all a bit helter-skelter, wasn't it? It's a difficult game to talk about, really, because what the most, I mean, the first half was what the first half was. Manchester made shots. Sorry, Caledonia made shots. Ramsey and Whelan had their way. Spielman, who was starting eventually, generally, people will have probably figured out now that something generally happens 2 weeks after I suggest it. Um, didn't I?
Yeah,
Am
you did.
I
You did.
lying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The starting Fraser Malcolm and Total Five Bentley is giving them some offensive issues. And so Spielman started, made some shots early. He's clearly a kind of a good catch and shoot guy and has a nice look, but he's basically, he's a slightly more mobile version of Tanner Stuckman, who they got rid of in December, which just talks about the whole um, nature of Caledonia's season.
Mm,
How it's just been so dysfunctional, you know. Um, and that helped them, and they got some space, they got some rebounds, and um, they got the three centers going. And Manchester, to be frank, Mandoli played quite a lot of guys in the first half, and there's only a few of them in the minutes.
mm, mm,
That was really interesting. Was what happened at the beginning of the second half.
mm. Before we get there, 11-2 start to the second quarter by Caledonia. FAJ with a third foul, 3.5 minutes into the second quarter. Caledonia started to pull away and led by as many as 13. And
Mm.
then, so let's go to the start of the third quarter. Mitchell, some threes, had it down to 6 or 7. Irvin playing well as well. Go on then.
Well, it was he started Carey and he
Mm,
started Delpesh.
yeah.
Now, Carey and Delpesh have been their ninth and tenth guys,
Yeah.
realistically. And Delpesh has hardly played. He was the third centre. They just brought in a centre to replace him for
Mm,
basic. Carey has been a kind of an relatively impactful afterthought
mm,
all season. He's never done anything particularly wrong. He knocks down threes with reasonable consistency from the corner, and
mm,
he tries very hard, and he defends, with energy. And the coach basically put them on the court, and I think there was no Zahara in the second half. I don't think there was effigy. I might be wrong, and I don't think Cody John got in the game in the second half. And I was kind of watching. I was watching, but I wasn't watching every substitution with enormous attention to detail, to be honest. I'm kind of basketballed out, but basically he said, "No, I'm going to go with guys who are bringing it,"
mm,
and that's brave, right? Because that's putting the noses out of joint of the guys who aren't.
mm.
You just signed a guy, and you're not playing, and that suggests a force of personality. I like that. I much prefer decisions as opposed to non-decisions.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
easy to make non-decisions. And I'm sure we've been there at times where I've made non-decisions,
Mm,
or if I've made non-decisions, and you always regretted it.
mm,
You always regretted it. So, put yourself out there. That's what you're getting paid for. Decide what your team needs. And if somebody's not helping you win, well, you don't need help to lose.
mm.
Put the
Yeah.
guys on there.
Mm.
And Delpesh was great.
Yeah, he was great.
Won the game for them, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Irvin with 5 points made it a 1 point game with 11 to play. Spielman, Ramsey, Malcolm threes at one end, Irvin, Mitchell threes at the other end. Came down to the last few plays, and as great as Del Pesh was, I think Ali Hodzic fouling out with 3:39 to go was key as well for what was to come.
Yeah, I mean, he plays so much on the edge, doesn't he?
Mm,
I think he fouled out an offensive foul as well
mm.
under the rim, which wasn't the smartest.
Pushing for a rebound.
Went for the rebound, and you watched back and it was a foul.
Mm,
You know. Um, so it hurt them. But Barnes is a perfectly capable five man. He's a different type of five man. And there's no way in the world that Marcus Delpech should be getting a foul shot rebound on the other sade of the rim when he's
mm.
got
Yeah.
Trayvon Barnes in front of him. You know what
Let,
I'm saying?
let's come through
We'll
to
get to that
that
in a
then.
second.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so it didn't make a difference. But I thought Caledonia's shots got harder.
Mm.
As the fourth quarter went on, Ramsey made a ridiculous spin turnaround 3-point shot.
Yeah,
But
ridiculous shot.
ridiculous shot. But you can only last those shots only last so long.
Mm,
Particularly I'm an absolute broken record with this. But with so much creativity, Fagbende really struggled offensively again, turning the ball over. There was a sequence where he turned the ball on an inbounds pass, turned it over again, airballed a three from the corner. Defensively made some great plays, good stuff in transition. But neither Fagbende nor Malcolm, really have anything off the dribble to create. Malcolm was a little bit off the catch, and Onwas wasn't playing, so he didn't give them that either. So then it's Ramsey, Spielman, and Whelan who have to create a lot of stuff, and Whelan's just being absolutely ran into the ground
mm,
because of the way, and he has to be. Don't blame Johnny for it. He has to. But Johnny's having to buy minutes for Ramsey and Whelan,
mm,
and eventually, the depth hurts. I'm sorry.
mm, mm.
So yeah,
So Irvin a three, Malcolm responds 83-86. Two to go. Delpesh two free throws. That was probably as important as anything he did afterwards.
yeah,
85, given he's a 50% free throw shooter. 85-86. On the subject of ridiculous shots, Mitchell 124 to go. Hit a crazy.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah,
Karu shot, wasn't it? It's kind of
yeah,
one leg kind of floating the wrong way.
yeah.
Crazy shot. Yeah.
87-86 to Manchester. Timeout, no advance. Delpesh commits his fourth foul, but only the team's third foul. So
Right.
sideline ball. Whelan attacks, doesn't go in, but Barnes tips it home to
Yeah.
make it 87-88 with 1:01 to go. Mitchell misses a three. Delpesh with the offensive rebound. Ashton Langford drives to the basket. He misses. That ends up out of bounds for Manchester ball. Timeout with 36 seconds to go. Mitchell drive, he was blocked and a foul was called. Manchester was screaming for goaltend. It definitely wasn't a goaltend. But
Contact, yeah, a bit of contact on Spielman. It's kind of not sure the Canadian refs would have called it, but the British did.
So 30.8 seconds to go. One of two free throws for Mitchell makes the first, misses the second, ties it up at 88. But Delpesh, as you say, coming from the other side, beats Barnes to the ball, offensive rebound, gives it to Mitchell, who hits a corner three, 26.6. It's 91-88.
There's two things about that play, you know. The first is that obviously, Barnes is blocking out his side of the court. And so Delpesh runs to the middle and actually runs to the front of the rim as opposed to kind of a line on his side of the court. Secondly, I think it might have been Fagbending. I'm not sure because they were subbing offense for defense at the end. Um, the ball came to the other side, and the Caledonia player was blocking out. So he blocked out to leave a gap for Delpesh to go into with
Mm,
momentum, if that made any sense,
yeah.
as opposed to going up and getting the rebound.
Mm,
And sometimes it's not as much about blocking out. You've got to go and, the foul shot rebound, you've got to go and get it.
yeah.
You block out on main, you block out on on jump shots and that. But when there's 30 seconds to go, you need a rebound.
Mm,
You got to go to the glass. Um, and they didn't. And then Mitchell did a great job relocating to the corner. Delpesh did a great job making the pass. And that's a foul shot for him. But he just missed one. He didn't
mm.
miss that one.
Timeout, advance the ball. Malcolm inbounds it to Whelan, gets it back, misses a three. Caledonia after a foul. It was one of them to me where it just looked like there's definitely contact on the feet, by the way. There's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
contact with it. It looked to me a little bit like his leg was reaching for it, and therefore I wasn't too disappointed with the no call, but I
Mm.
could understand if I was of a Caledonia persuasion why I'd be shouting for a foul.
Yeah, I watched it back. I mean, it's not particularly egregious, his leg movement. He goes up and his leg kind of comes out to the right. It doesn't come out in front of him.
Yeah.
Um,
And the
I
defensive player is running across him,
defensive
obviously.
player is running across him and makes contact with the leg. Now, I think, and it's a difficult call for the ref, but the ref has to be making that call on the basis that the Caledonia players initiated the contact. Well, if the Caledonia players initiated the contact, for me, it's an offensive foul.
Mm.
You know, I don't think I know what you're saying, it's a no call. It's a good no call. But for me, that's like one of those things where there's a massive amount of contact
Yeah, yeah,
on the drive. Well, it's got to be one
yeah,
of the,
yeah, yeah,
there's physical contact there. And I'm probably of the view that 75-25, I'd have called it on the angle we had on the TV
as a shooting foul.
as a shooting foul.
Yeah,
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 as on the angle we had on the TV. Now,
mm.
that isn't necessarily the best angle.
Yeah,
Well, the rest might not necessarily have had the best angle either. But when there is contact, I think it was Paul Unsworth who was a top ref. When there is contact, there's definitely something to say. It wasn't a smart play by Manchester anyway. But sometimes when you're 4-19, you don't get that on the road.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and yeah, you just got to try and chalk it up. I don't think it was a horrendously bad call because, as you say, Malcolm's leg came out to the right. But I've seen a lot weaker things than that called this year.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I've seen calls where players have kicked out as being given as defensive fouls,
yeah, yeah. True.
and
There
that
was
probably
there was one that sticks in my head at Cheshire a couple of weeks ago where it was a foot out in front was given as a 4 point play.
yeah.
But nothing was called.
Was that William?
Hey, I
That
can't
one?
remember. I can't
Wouldn't have
remember who it was. I can't remember.
that
I just
wouldn't have
remember
been
it was in the opposite corner to on the camera right.
it
As you
wasn't it was
look
that different game, my fault.
at it. Manchester made two free throws. They got fouled, obviously, with 19 seconds to go, 93-85. And then Spielman sort of bobbled in a random three on the buzzer to make it a 2 point game.
Yeah, well, good for his numbers.
Mm.
Help him get a job. Good for you, Jet.
Yeah. Mitchell, 30 points, 10 of 15 and 6 assists. Irvin, 28 points, 12 of 15. So that is 58 points from 30 shots for those two.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to be too critical with either of them from Caledonia's perspective because Mitchell makes tough shots. Um, and I mean, in theory, they should have the bodies to guard him. But I mean, he made one pull up, I think,
Mm,
to his right, with maybe in fact Bentley right in his face. It was an incredible shot, you know.
mm,
So when he's going, he's not the easiest guy to guard. They gave him a couple of easier looks early, maybe. And Irvin gets his on movement, and Jason talked about it. He gets his without dribbling the basketball.
mm,
And to be fair to him, his move, he times his cuts.
mm,
So he's catching the ball whilst he's moving, and he's good. He does all his work before he catches the basketball, so he's able to be around the rim. He knows where he is, and he's a good finisher around the rim. Then he got some corner threes to drop as well, which
mm,
also helps him. But then you get that out of rhythm. But the guy who won the game for them was Delpesh.
mm,
For all of that,
mm.
and sometimes when you play players, they play better because the coach believes in them.
Yeah, yeah.
They feel like they believed in. He's getting a chance. Well, there are players who whinge about not getting minutes, and then when they don't get minutes, you kind of
Mm.
you see why.
Well, last 2 minutes, he's gone 2 for 2 from the free throw line. He's got a an offensive rebound recycle back out. He's caused a bit of chaos for an offensive rebound out of bounds. He's then got an offensive rebound off a missed free throw and an assist to what was basically the game-winning three.
Yeah, he won the game for them.
Mm,
I have no doubt about that. He won the game for them.
mm,
And he's undersized. He's doing that against Barnes.
mm,
He's undersized. He's probably 6'8" at best.
mm,
Um, so good job by Mandalay for playing him. He's got two more expensive centers. He's just who he's given a shot to. They haven't done the job, so he's gone with the guy who's bringing it.
mm,
That's the way it's meant to be.
mm. DeBose, 11 points and 7 assists. Spielman, 7 of 11 for 20 points. Whelan, 3 of 12 for 17 points. And Malcolm, 15 points. So let's run through the table. London top 20 and 4. Sheffield in second, 17 and 16. Leicester in third, 16 and 7. Cheshire have probably qualified for
Right.
the playoffs. I couldn't be bothered. They have the head-to-head with Caledonia, and I couldn't be bothered to do all the multiple ties that are
No,
possible in between that. So I'm just
you,
giving them
good for you. Go on, lad.
a PQ, probably qualified. They are fourth with 12 and 14 record. Newcastle are fifth, 11 and 13. Manchester 10 and 14. Bristol 8 and 12. Surrey 7 and 15. And Caledonia 4 and 20.
Caledonia have 8 games left. They have to win 4 of them to have a shot of getting past Surrey if Surrey don't win another game, which is
Mm,
unlikely. Realistically, they probably got to win 6 out of 8.
mm,
And they're 2-9 since Johnny came on board, and they're still short of extra guard, and they've got some injuries.
mm,
That loss might be the killer. That
yeah.
one might just be the
Well,
killer.
if you just think of it, there's 2 games at Manchester that they could have won,
Yeah,
and if you put them at 6 and 18, then
it's
suddenly
game on. Yeah,
chance,
it's game on. But ultimately, they're not going to beat London in the playoffs over
no,
2.
no,
I assume London are going to win the league. That's an assumption. But those extra 4 losses London had, 4 wins London had when they were 18 and 4,
mm,
and Sheffield and Leicester were 14 and 4.
mm.
Those extra 4 wins have meant something, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, yeah.
Because it's hard to get to
It's
18
hard
wins.
to get, yeah.
And in the meantime, they're up to 20.
Mm,
So Sheffield now have to play basically perfect basketball to win out the season. I'm not sure I don't see that happening.
no,
Mm.
no.
But stranger things have happened.
Stranger
But
things have happened.
we could have an extraordinarily boring end of the season.
We could, yeah, we could. Well, all the drama will be who finishes fourth to play the second leg at home against the team who's just fighting with them to play the second leg at
We
home.
could over, yeah, to which I say.
Yeah.
Because given that Leicester have had 2 second legs at home this year with tie games and
Yeah.
with 3-point games, and they haven't managed to
Mm,
knock it off. I think that whole thing is just the playoffs are badly organised. The two-legged playoffs, I never liked, hated them.
Mm,
Thought it was wrong. Um, it wasn't sufficient prize for teams that finished in the top four.
mm,
It still isn't. Um, it's economy over
mm,
competitive probity, I'm
yeah,
afraid.
yeah. So on assumptions that only Dave Forrester could have come up with, I think we'll call it a night for
Yeah.
this Sunday. I think I'm back on the road to Cheshire next Sunday, so we'll be probably back to Monday next week. But it's just 2 Sundays in a row. Have we done two
I
Sundays in a
know, I
row?
know. I know. We're reclaiming our name.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be clever and come up with the real Sunday night breakdown, aren't they?
Yeah,
Each
yeah,
off our back, you know.
yeah, yeah,
You've probably got Roe thinking about it already or
yeah.
something.
You just need to be the first, mate. You don't have to be. You don't have to be the best. We'll always live in the legacy of being the first Sunday night breakdown. That's what it is. Right. We'll. There's midweek games galore. I think this week, isn't
No,
there? I think so. Our least favourite edition is when we have to remember back to a game on Tuesday.
Tuesday. Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
I think Bristol. Bristol. I was
Bristol,
looking.
London, I think, on Tuesday.
All I remember seeing is on the milestone thing, it said Andreas Paulus could get to 150 wins, and he's only on 147, so they've got a busy week.
I think by the end of the season, he could be at 200.
He could be, yeah. So we'll be back next week. People enjoy the basketball on Tuesday and whenever else it is, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.